Right now, we're going to go through a little bit of housekeeping and let you know what you can expect for today while we're waiting for all of our panelists to join. Yes, Ms. Dina, we will post that in the link for you. I'll try to send that out as well while John is doing the exercise demo. Okay. All right. So it looks like 8% of you, this is your first time joining us. If you participated in the poll, welcome. Thank you for joining us. All right, so each week for 1 hour from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., we, the Emory Goizetta Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, host a weekly session titled BrainTalk Live. And what we're doing is we're trying to keep you engaged and informed. So since March 31st of 2020, we have been hosting these weekly sessions where we feature our faculty and staff and other collaborators throughout the country to talk about brain health. And so today you're going to hear from several Emory faculty and staff, but we always kick off the session with exercise. Because what do we say? What's good for your heart is good for your brain. And so get ready. John's going to tell you what you need so you can prepare for the exercise demo. It's short, but it is a full body workout. Okay. So, John, what do we need to prepare for the exercise demo?
Hey, today you need a comfortable chair and your mind right, because we're going to get this cardio in plus body sculpting, and we're going nonstop. And I want to make sure I say, go at your own risk. And look, if your capabilities aren't there, slow down or pick up. Let's get it started in a minute.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John. So get ready for the exercise demo. He said it. He said, participate at your own risk, right? So go at your own pace. Okay. But we want you moving. We want you active. We're still in a pandemic. Today, you're going to hear from Dr. Ken Hepburn immediately after John Lewis's exercise demonstration. We're going to just talk through what are the reservations about having the COVID-19 vaccine. Right now, what we're hearing is that the testing is down because they're converting those testing sites into vaccination sites, which is good. That's what we want to hear. We want distribution up. We want vaccinations up. And so Dr. Hepburn is going to talk us through what that process is, and we'll have a short discussion about that. Then Dr. Parker is going to talk about nutrition. Right now, we're in March and spring is coming on. If you're participating in Lent, perhaps your diet may be changing, but there are certain foods that you should be considering as you're aging, and that could help improve your aging lifestyle. So she's going to talk about that. Then we're going to hear from Carlissa Carson, who is the staff attorney at Emory Law. She's going to be talking about a veterans program clinic that's coming up on March 11th. So if you know a veteran, this is a good time to invite them to join us right now. You have time. We'll share the link in the chat. And remember, the Q&A and the chat function is open. If you have anything you want to share with our panelists today, go right ahead and do that. And finally, you're going to hear from Whit Morgan. He is with our Healthy Aging Study. Every week, we are talking about this opportunity where you can participate in research. So we would love for you to join if you haven't joined the Emory Healthy Aging Study. It's an online study. If you're on the fence about it, we will encourage you to at least sign up for the mailing list so you can have a little bit more insight. But Whit Morgan is going to talk about that. And then finally, you're going to hear from Matt Doiron with our Cognitive Empowerment Program. He's going to be sharing who will be featured today at 3 p.m. All right. I think that's all of the housekeeping that I need to cover today. John, come on in, get our hearts going as we prepare for this first Tuesday in March.
All right, here we go. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone to the Emory Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. Remember, you need a comfortable chair, and let's get started. I want to warm up a little bit. Let's go to butterfly. I need you to go up and down. 5. Good. Come on, we're warming that body up because we're going to take off. Go down. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Our next one, I want to make sure elbows up and let's twist. Let's tell that body we're about to do an exercise and we're about to get that cardio in and do something special for our body. Good. Our next one up, lean over. Good. And the other side. Good. All right, I just want you to roll. I call it like a seated hula hoop. Come on. Good, and other way. Let's go. Okay, here we go. And good. Let's get these hips ready. Up and rotate. All right, 5 right. 1, 2, come on. 3, 4, and 5. Other leg, ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's get these arms ready. Rotate them. Rotate them. Come on. Other way. Good. Cross it. Cross it. And good. Here we go now. Here we go. Come on, come on. Hey, everybody, let's go.
Sit pace that super bass got boom, boom. Got me there like I'm Kurt Cobain, boom, boom. Sit pace that super bass got boom, boom. Got me there like I'm Kurt Cobain, boom, boom. Sit pace that.
Come on. Keep it going now. Let's go. Watch it. Now we're going to go about it. Let's be real. Let's go. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Short, short. Big. Y'all ready? Hold on. We get no hands straight right now. Come on. Make it come on. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Everybody.
Sit pace that super bass got boom, boom. Got me there like I'm Kurt Cobain, boom, boom. Sit pace that super bass got boom, boom. Got me there like I'm Kurt Cobain, boom, boom.
Come on, get that waistline.
Sit pace that.
Let's go. Come on, get that waistline. We lose some energy off that waistline right now. Get on. Come on, body. Go wide. All right. Great job. We're going to slow it down a little bit. I want these arms today. Rock with it. Switch legs. Come on. Press. Right leg straight. hips. We working the glutes. Let's go. Press. Other leg. Come on, come on. Come on. Any back problems? We loosen it up right now. Press. Okay. Back. Come on. Come on. Press. All right. That's it, y'all. 10 more seconds. I need you to stay with me. We're going to the islands. And if you want to stand up, you can. If you want to sit down, it's okay. Come on. I just want you to just roll. And if you sit down, I want you to keep that same motion. Come on. Rest. Come on. Let's go, gentlemen. Let's go, ladies. Come on. Let's get y'all. Okay. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I enjoyed you today. We stepped that cardio up. And remember, cardio is life. Cardio is life. Next week, we having a day party. So bring out all your festivities, your party clothes, and we're gonna have a day party next Tuesday. I'm John Lewis, and see you later, bye.
All right. Are you not moving and energized with all of that activity? And just look, a short amount of time, and you got some cardio in, you got some movement, you should be feeling great. So now's the time to go grab your notebook and your ink pens, or if you're just typing away and following along with us. You know, we cover a lot of information in a short amount of time, right? So we're going to get right to it. Let's go with Dr. Hepburn, and then you're going to hear from Dr. Parker about nutrition and the brain. Then from Carlissa Carson from Emory Law, followed by Whit, who's going to talk about our healthy aging study. So, hello, Ken, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Wonderful. All right, well, I've made you a co-host, so you can take it away.
Okay, so my topic today is going to be to sort of look at any reservations you all might have about getting the COVID-19 vaccination when your number is called, as it were. And I mentioned that to my wife, and she said, we had no reservations at all. We went ahead and jumped into the trial and did it, and we vaccinated and feel good about it. But I think there are some reasons that people might have, and so let's talk about them. One is the rapidity with which the vaccines were produced. I mean, now we're about to have 3 separate vaccines. They're parallel in nature. They're all the same type, but 3 developed under a year. Perhaps one, we might be concerned about unknown long-term effects on our health, or for how long the vaccines might be effective. There are some ongoing reports of some short-term effects, and we could look at some of those. Not all groups are tested. There's a history. Everything happens in context of history, and this vaccine is no exception. There's a history of vaccines and some good things and bad things. There's some suspicion that we're all test cases. My own personal regret was that there was no lollipop at the end, and then there might be some other reasons. So let's kind of look at those. I think the rapid production thing may be the most challenging for many of us. We're used to the fact that, and we had a speaker on, a wonderful speaker, far more knowledgeable than I about these topics, but she pointed out that historically vaccines take a long time to produce, maybe 10 to 15 years. One reason, and one main reason for that, is that vaccines, generally speaking, are produced by corporate entities. So these are like investments that are made, and they develop slowly over time, and they invest in a broad band of things, and over time they sort of narrow down to some things they want to further test. So it's the length of time for producing a vaccine is probably more the result of a business model than a science model. The science of producing vaccines is now very well developed. And so it's within the context of that science that these vaccines were produced. But beyond that, there has been really very atypical collaboration among not only drug manufacturers, but governments. So people are sharing things that would be ordinarily kept very, very secret. And governments have opened up their coffers. So this has been a massively funded, really massively shared venture. This is also not a vaccine that involves live viruses. This is a manufactured thing. I can say it's a monoclonal antibody, and then if somebody asks me what's that, I'm going to sign off. So it's a thing, and its function is to attach to the virus and to get inside it and sort of make it its own worst enemy. But they know how to do this. They've been using these monoclonal antibodies for years. Of equal importance, there has been an expedited process for the trial. So typically vaccines go through a safety trial, phase 1 trial, to see if there are any really, really bad things that can happen. And then a kind of a dosing trial, what's the right amount to give? And then the third phase, which is the massive trial that's occurred with 30 and 20 and so many thousands of people, where that dose that's been determined to be safe is given to a lot of people randomly. So some people get the dose, some get placebo, and it's across all 3 trials. It's been very closely monitored in a way that's allowed the 3 phases to somewhat meld together, or at least occur in a succession that's much more timely than usual. And there have been large trials, and they've been found to be highly effective. So 95% effectiveness is remarkable. But it's also trustworthy result, okay? So the rapid production could be one reservation. What's going on here? Here we go. We don't know what the long-term effects are. That's certainly true. The Moderna trial is going to follow us for 25 months. We get something on our phone every week, says, sort of in effect, how you doing? And if we say, even a little bit, we might have had a little sniffles, we get a call from our study coordinator. This thing is really heavily monitored. There have been some things emerge. So some people said, a little thing went on, and now they've discovered that people who've taken Botox-like treatments for a variety of dermatological conditions might be susceptible to some facial swelling, short-term facial swelling. This week, there was something that came out about some lymph node swelling that produced sort of a cancer scare in people. The remarkable thing is that how on top of it the monitoring functions are, and how able the data safety monitoring boards, which are following these, are looking at the reports, investigating them thoroughly, and issuing cautions as necessary. So far, there's been nothing to suggest any concern about problems. Some might be waiting for something better. There's nothing current in development. The reason I say that something better is because there are variants, popping up. So we saw something today that the Brazilian variant might actually leave people who've gotten the COVID susceptible to acquiring it again. So the strain that we have now, it may be the case that persons who've gotten COVID are immune from there on. This new variant, perhaps not so much. And so maybe we need a vaccine that's even more potent, but nothing is currently in development. Everything is being watched carefully. And the thought is perhaps some tinkering with existing vaccines and maybe the need for a booster shot, but nothing to suggest that it's worth waiting because something much better might be in the wings. There really have been bad results with vaccines in the past. I've forgotten, but people in my generation might remember that when the Salk vaccine first came out, there was a really bad incident known as the Cutter incident, where a whole lot of kids got injected with a contaminated vaccine and got really, they just basically developed polio. That sort of produces a generational awareness that, just because you say something works doesn't necessarily mean it does. The swine flu had some bad results. People, Gulf War, soldiers in the Gulf War were given medications to prevent complications from some of the spraying that went on. And a lot of those servicemen were subsequently affected with something called Gulf War syndrome. And again, within that generation, there could be some distrust built up. So there are things in our world, in our history, that produce some doubts. What I think we can look at is the care and the science with which these vaccines have been developed to provide some assurance. Unclear if this is good for children and infants. There's been some question whether women who are pregnant should take it or whether it be effective. So there are some gray areas around the edges, and that could produce some hesitation. I'd already mentioned the Gulf War syndrome, and I think no one can ever forget, experiments on whole people that were done for malign reasons. And, are we all test cases? So there's a possibility that people would have something in the back of the mind not to trust, just not to trust, because have been reasons not to trust. And then there's a lot of stuff out there that I can't kind of handle kind of intellectually, but people think it's not a virus. It's something that's happened to us because of the emanations from 5G towers, or it's actually just a plot to implant microchips and to control all of us. And those kinds of things, I think, are, we all are somewhat susceptible to thinking that bad people are doing bad things, but we are dealing with a situation where 500,000 people have died and about 25 million Americans have been infected. And we have something that is a whole body of evidence that says this is really effective, it works, and it's safe. So I would counsel to, first acknowledge the reservations you might have, and then sort of balance them up against the amount of information that we have that suggests this is a very wise and safe thing to do. Marcia Fisher said that sure, there are side effects, had some memory. A lot of people have side effects after the second shot. They seem to be, or even maybe the first shot as well, they seem to pass within 12 to 24 hours. So, be prepared. And that's one of the reasons that I resent not getting a lollipop, because I should deal with it. So,
All right. Well, Dr. Wharton, Dr. Parker, do you have any closing remarks? I see Mr. Don stated, how do you convince someone who is just an outright denier of the
Sure. I think that, there are lots of people who deny a lot of things. All we can do in this era is make sure that there's as much truthful, evidence-based information out there, and people have the ability to interpret that information and make their own personal choice about whether they will take something or whether they won't take something. I think that as we've gone along, and because I'm on a couple of task force for COVID for a lot of community groups, those people that want it, those people are happy to have it, need to go on and get it. If all the information presented is not convincing enough for you to agree to take any of the vaccines that are available, that's your choice. I heard a joke the other day where people didn't say anything about all the funny foods that we eat, medications we take without even asking about the evidence. The joke was about male hormones and other things. I'm just like, if we go to McDonald's and we eat a lot of prepared and prepackaged food, we drink sodas and things like that without and understand what those things are doing to us. I mean, same thing with vaccines. I think that there's enough information out there that's truthful, that's evidence-based, and you need to assert your conscience and your will and do what you think is best for you. Can't do any more. I just hope that everybody who's resistant to getting it is in a position to access a healthcare system in the event that they do become infected with the COVID virus or any other virus that's similar, and that you can have those healthcare needs addressed when the time arises.
And the final question before we move on, have all of you had your vaccine? Dr. Wharton, Dr. Hepburn has, Dr. Parker has.
oh yeah.
One thing I wanted to add to what Dr. Hepburn and Dr. Parker mentioned was that, what we're talking about with COVID right now really concerns the hospitalization and the death rates due to COVID. So these are, imminent threats. We have not yet even begun to delve into the long-term ramifications of what the COVID virus might mean for the body and for the brain. So, what the clinical data show is that the risk for the vaccine is minuscule in regard to, in comparison to the actual COVID disease, which does stand to have long-term repercussions. And that's mainly driven through both systemic body and brain inflammation. So none of those data are even available. So I think, the long-term ramifications of the disease are, again, going to far outweigh the ramifications of the vaccine. So if you have the opportunity to get the vaccine, I would definitely, take that into heavy consideration. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your congregants. But that's something that I would definitely recommend that you all consider doing if you're able to get it.
Thank you, Dr. Wharton. Thank you, Kim. There's a couple more questions. If you can address them in the chat, we're going to move on. And one person said, is this the memory program? You bet it is. We talk about anything and everything related to aging adults and caregivers and research. So with that, we're going to transition. Dr. Parker is going to be talking about memory loss, dementia, and Alzheimer's, and diet.
Okay,
Welcome, Dr.
so
Parker.
that being said, thank you so much, Cornelia. I'm going to go as quickly as I can because Dr. Wharton, who is co-lead for our Outreach, Recruitment, and Education Corps, has recently published a paper that has to do with diet. So let me just acquaint those of us who are on the phone with the basics. Okay, so what are some of the risk factors for having brain dysfunction? We can talk about dementia, but there are lots of things, if you've been on here before, that cause dementia. So what are some of the things that make your brain go not work well? So if you live long enough, chances are the older the organism, the more likely you are to have problems with the way your brain functions. So if you're above the age of 80 or 90, there may be something that goes on there. We know that genetics, particularly being female, puts us at greater risk for having Alzheimer's, but there are other things on this list, and I'm sure you can read through them, but several of the things on here are preventable, or things that we can do or mitigate to keep from increasing our risk for Alzheimer's. Anything related to having strokes or heart disease, things like atrial fibrillation, heart failure, hypertension, high cholesterol, those are all risk factors for strokes, and strokes are risk factors for developing vascular dementia. Untreated mood disorders, things like depression. Depression can be treated. So if we've been screened for it, we can treat it and we can manage it. Substance abuse, chronic alcoholism results in an encephalopathy or an alcohol-induced kind of dementia. It's not a delirium, it is a dementia because brain cells have deteriorated and they're no longer functioning. There are medication interactions that can make it such that you don't process information well. Sometimes active chemotherapy, and usually when the chemotherapy stops, the brain can resort to normal. People who are taking different medications that have been prescribed and taken correctly in older adults may have untoward side effects. People who have sleep disorders, treating and managing sleep apnea is very important for maintaining brain health, because when you sleep and you don't get enough, when you don't sleep well and you don't get enough oxygen to your brain cells are deteriorating. So the other things that are on that list, diabetes is something that we can intervene with. Thyroid disease needs to be managed. Chronic head trauma, whether you're an athlete, a football player, or a victim of domestic abuse, or even a military person who's had significant head trauma, is at risk for having a brain dysfunction. Okay, next please. So the Lancet report in 2017 issued a report that said many things that can lead to dementia can be preventable. So if we change our lifestyle a little bit, we can prevent the onset of global dementia by 30%. So some of the lifestyle recommendations that were made, this Lancet Commission report came out in 2017. It's been updated in 2020. And these are the 9 things that they have on there: smoking cessation, treating hypertension, preventing and treating diabetes, maintaining an ideal body weight, a body mass index of 25, activity, maintaining good physical activity, 150 minutes or more a week of aerobic activity. That's walking, cycling, swimming, dancing. Sex, treating, managing depression, preventing social isolation, getting a complete secondary education. What does that mean? That means getting educated enough such that you prevent that you are literate. Managing hearing loss. Things that have been updated to protect brain function now include things like mitigating air pollution. Air pollution is a risk factor for brain dysfunction. Again, we think of dementia and brain dysfunction as a life course disease. So things that you do as you get younger, when you start out life, may have an effect on things as you get a little bit older. Next, please. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is diet and nutrition for the mind. So one of the things that Dr. Wharton's going to talk about is how we can keep our mind healthy. You know, having dementia is not something that is inevitable. So if we keep our heart healthy, we can likely keep our brains healthy. So some of the diets that have been recommended are the Mediterranean diet, which has an emphasis on eating things like fish, olive oil, fresh green leafy vegetables. Just think that you go to Greece, you live in Greece, and you eat what comes out of the ocean and grows on the mountainside. The DASH diet, which is a heart healthy kind of thing. The MIND diet, which kind of mingles the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet, which is an antihypertensive diet, which is low on salt, low on red meats, low on organ meats and fats and fried things. And then there's something called Dr. Weil's anti-inflammation diet. Suffice it to say that those of us who live in the southeastern United States who like to eat fried chicken, fried fish, fried pies, That's something I did during pandemic. This is a good thing to do, but anything fried is not particularly good for you. So you're going to learn more about it. So if you want to know what to eat, these are the diets that have been recommended: Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, the MIND diet, nothing deep fried and fatty. Next, easy way, a dietary recommendation that came about during the 2008-2012 era. We kind of updated the food pyramid. If you can't remember MIND diet and DASH diets and all these other things, it's important to look at My Plate. These are the dietary recommendations for an appropriate diet. Now you can look up myplate.gov. This is you can look this up online. They have a special one for children. They have a special one for older adults. But the important thing is, the easy thing is, take your plate, put it into quarters, and try to put all these things in the quarter. 1/4 of your plate should be fruits. 1/4 should be vegetables. The important piece here is that half your plate should be fruits and vegetables, and only 1/4 should be a protein. That protein can be a lean meat, like beef, like chicken, like fish. It can be grains. It can be a non-animal source of protein. But you can't remember MIND diet, you can't remember Mediterranean diet, you can remember My Plate. The important thing is, half your plate needs to be fruits and vegetables, not deep fat fried fruits and vegetables, but fruits that you can see and recognize. Colorful plates. Keep going. So the Mediterranean diet, so just to give you a capsule of this, it's healthy oils. Instead of eating butter and margarine, you use olive oil and canola oil. Proteins, things like skinless chicken, turkey, fish, beans, nuts, less red meat. I know we like red steak. I mean, I like beef. I like steak, but it's not a nice, well-marbled ribeye that you should be eating. You know, maybe a sirloin instead. Fresh vegetables all day, 3 to 8 servings of fresh vegetables and fruits all day. Nuts, seeds, low-fat cheese, things like mozzarella cheese for snacks. Fruit for dessert instead of a pastry. Next. What is the DASH diet? This is one that's supposed to prevent heart disease, that prevents hypertension. Dietary approaches to stop hypertension. This means no processed foods high in salt, fat, and sugar. That means things like no bacon, no sausage, no ham, no donuts, fancy coffees with lots of sugar in them. It means fresh vegetables and fruits, not processed things, but fresh vegetables and fruits. Lean meats and poultry, similar to what you saw in the Mediterranean diet. Nuts and seeds for snacks 3 to 4 times a day. Almonds, walnuts, chia seeds, okay? And instead of drinking a sugary drink like our Coca-Colas, like I work for a company that has a lot of Coca-Cola stock. Oh, Monica, you got to drink Coca-Cola. You know, that helps our business. No, you need to drink water. Even Coca-Cola has bottled water. The Coke company has bottled water, but more water, flavored waters with fruit and vegetables, as opposed to soft drinks. No Cokes, no Mountain Dews, no 7-Ups. And whole unprocessed grains instead of white rice, brown rice. Things that are using processed grains like oatmeal, things like that. Next, the MIND diet is, I think, the next thing that should be on here. This is a combination of the Mediterranean and the DASH diet. It's the Mediterranean intervention for neurocognitive delay. That's what they call it. That's how they push together the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. It basically says no butter, no stick margarine, no cheese, pastries, no fried or fast foods. You have, instead of the hard solid fats like lard and butter, you're using olive oil. Again, a strong emphasis on fresh fruits and vegetables. 1 to 2 glasses of wine daily, lean poultry and lean fish, but no red meat. Somebody in the chat said, what about peanuts? Well, peanuts are not really nuts. They're actually legumes. So they're vegetable protein. They're a plant-based protein. So I would have no problem with it. But you have to be careful about some of these things. I like avocados, but too much avocado gives you a heavy dose of oil. It's a good fat, but you have to be careful about it. Keep going. So the most important thing that you should take away here is that some brain dysfunction can be prevented by the way we eat. And if you can't remember what to eat, more fresh fruits and vegetables, keep a colorful plate. At this point in time, I'd like Dr. Whitney Wharton to tell you a little bit about what she's published about diet and nutrition and being in the South.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. Appreciate it. That's great. So I'll just piggyback off of what Dr. Parker was saying and let you all know about a recent study that we published, which I will put in the chat. We conducted a study it finished about a year ago, and we conducted it in 40 African-American women who were middle-aged and who were at risk for Alzheimer's because they have a parent with Alzheimer's, and they were also caring for their parent. And this was a part of a larger study where we did a tango dance intervention, which is a kind of an exercise intervention, but we took initial readings on everyone medically and conducted a questionnaire where we collected information about what people ate on a daily basis. Everyone in the intervention was relatively healthy. As I mentioned, everyone was African-American, a woman, and a caregiver of their parent with Alzheimer's. Everyone was on average about 58 years old, and the average BMI, which was pretty healthy, was around 29 to 30. So this was pretty much a healthy cohort. And then what we did was look at what people were eating. And we said, how do we think this is related to a couple of things? One is their markers of inflammation, which we get from a blood sample. And number two, how were these women performing on cognitive tests? And what we did was divide the women into what we would consider a high-fat diet and women who were on a low-fat diet. So the women who were eating high-fat foods, which is, if you have a plate in front of you and it's kind of fatty and brown and covered in gravy and delicious, versus people that were on primarily, the Mediterranean diet that Dr. Parker was talking about, which has a bunch of nuts and berries and salads. We divided these people into two groups. And what we found was that individuals who were on the high-fat diet were, not surprisingly, had higher levels of inflammation in their blood, even though they were of overall a healthy weight. And, middle age, they had also enrolled in an exercise intervention. So there wasn't, a huge mobility issue there. And then on the Mediterranean diet, and what we found was that the markers of inflammation were significantly higher in the high-fat diet. But interestingly, what we found was that the markers of spinal fluid in the brain was also higher in the women who were on the high-fat diet versus the low-fat diet. And this also was related their cognitive performance. So the takeaway from this study, this cross-sectional part of the overall intervention, was that, high-fat diets not only impact our, overall markers of inflammation in the body, but it really affects it in the brain. And that's even if you're at a very healthy weight. So even if you haven't had a clinical incident, even if you are, overall very healthy and you're having your wellness visits, that doesn't mean that the ramifications of an unhealthy diet are not affecting you and are importantly not affecting your brain. And, the important takeaway is that it seemed to be also affecting the cognition. Measured, which we used a measure of global cognition and executive function, which I know a lot of you have heard about, in the brains, which are independent risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. So, if you are in any way able to look at diet, and we focus on diet because it is a modifiable risk factor. You know, we can't change our genes, we can't change our gender, we can't necessarily change our caregiver status, but if this is something that you can take control of in your own life, that is something that you can modify, which would hypothetically mitigate your risk for Alzheimer's disease in the future. And again, we really focus on this we wanted to focus on this with this particular talk because many of you are caregivers and you literally don't have time, you know, to think about your own diets or your own, you know, exercise routine because you're so busy. But if there is one thing that you can try to take control of or modify, diet might be something that you want to focus on that can be a preventative strategy in your Alzheimer's disease overall risk.
Thank you, Dr. Wharton. So I hope Dr. Wharton, Dr. Parker, and Dr. Hepburn are able to address all of the comments and remarks in the chat. We are going to transition over to Carlisa Carson, I apologize, with Emory Law, and she's going to talk about this amazing opportunity that's coming up. Again, we try to pack a lot in a short amount of time. Any one of these topics we could absolutely take a whole hour on, but we just want to give you a snapshot so you can go do your own research. So tell us, Mrs. I want to call you Dr. Carson, Mrs. Carson. Tell us all about the volunteer clinic.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me again on BrainTalk Live. My name is Carlisa. My mother apparently wanted to make things as complicated as possible. So a lot of people struggle with the name, but it's Carlisa. And I manage the Emory Law Volunteer Clinic for military veterans, and also teach international law courses for Emory Law. And what we do at our clinic is we provide free legal assistance to low-income veterans located all throughout Georgia. And on this next slide here, you'll see our team members. We currently have 4 VA accredited attorneys. So in order to represent persons before the Veterans Administration, you have to, as an attorney, have a separate accreditation. So all 4 of us attorneys are VA accredited. And yeah, we have 4 attorneys so far, and we're looking to take on as many cases as we possibly can. And actually, a lot of people ask me how I came into this line of work. So I actually enlisted in the United States Army as a 96 Bravo, which back then was an intel analyst. And then I decided to join Army ROTC. So I did Army ROTC at Georgia Tech and commissioned as a military intelligence officer. And I did that for a number of years until I graduated from law school. And then I switched to the Army JAG Corps. And after 9 long years in the Army, I decided it was time to fly. And I joined the Air Force. And I've actually been in the Air Force as a judge advocate since 2012. So I've been assisting service members for half of my life at this point. And so again, we're happy to help veterans. And this is our team. And on the next slide, I'm going to talk to you specifically about the issues that we help with. So one issue is VA disability, and there are a whole lot of issues that fall under this category. So one might be you need assistance with appealing a denial. So let's say you applied to the VA to get a type of injury service connected and you were denied. Typically you have 1 year to file an appeal. And if you're in that 1 year time period and you need help appealing that denial, let us know. Also, you might have a claim that's been closed out, but you have what we would refer to as new and material evidence. So you would file what's called a supplemental claim. So if you have an old claim that's been closed out, but you feel like you have new and material evidence that might change the result of your initial claim, we can help you with that. Another thing we help with is called rating increases. So sometimes you get service connected for a particular condition, let's say post-traumatic stress, for instance, and you might get a disability rating of 50%. Well, it might be over the course of a year or so, you feel like that condition, the post-traumatic stress, has worsened. Well, if that's the case, and you have, your medical records to support that, we can always apply to the VA to get an increase in your disability rating. And of course, the amount of money you receive per month, which is tax-free, by the way, that goes up as your disability rating goes up. Another thing we can help with under VA disability is contesting a reduction. So sometimes the Veterans Administration will decide that your condition has improved. So it might be that you were service connected and you had a disability rating of, let's say, 100%. So you're getting that full monthly benefit. And all of a sudden the VA says, you know what, we're going to reduce your rating from 100% to 50%. And it matters because the monthly benefit amount goes down. Well, you might disagree with the VA and you might say, hey, wait a minute, my condition has not, improved at all. If you're in that situation, we can certainly provide help with that. Another issue is discharge upgrades. And what we do here is we work to actually change the characterization of your service. So when you leave the service, you get a discharge, and it's either an honorable discharge, a general discharge, an under other than honorable conditions discharge, or a dishonorable discharge. And this characterization matters a lot because, for instance, if you want a VA home loan, which is a loan guaranteed by the VA, which helps you get a low interest rate, you generally need to have an honorable conditions discharge if you want to be buried in a military cemetery. And here's a big one. If you want to receive disability benefits from the VA, they're not going to grant you a service connection and give you disability benefits if they look and see that you have a dishonorable or an under other than honorable conditions discharge. So sometimes we can actually get this upgraded for you because sometimes people receive characterizations that they shouldn't receive. So sometimes people are suffering from a traumatic brain injury, for instance, and it changes how they are, in the workforce, within the military, or let's say they're suffering from post-traumatic stress. Something like that was not really recognized in the 60s, for instance, as it is today. And sometimes what would happen is a service member would maybe fall into alcoholism or drug addiction, and then they would get kicked out of the military with, let's say, a dishonorable discharge, instead of receiving the help they should have received. Sometimes people get a bad discharge because of racism or sexism. So if you feel like you fall into these categories and you want to get that discharge upgraded, please let us know. And another area that we will help with is estate planning. So we will help you prepare a will, we can prepare a power of attorney for you, and we can even prepare an advance directive for healthcare. And I want to emphasize, because I get this question a lot, these services are provided free of charge. And especially if you're in the Atlanta area, a will is going to cost you about $750, maybe even $1,000. And a lot of attorneys charge $150 to $250 for just a POA, $100 to $200 for just an advance directive for healthcare. So if you are a veteran and you need help with one of these areas, please let us know. And also, we have strong connections with Atlanta Legal Aid Society and Georgia Legal Services Provider. So if you need assistance in an area that we don't normally work in, feel free to go ahead and give us a call anyway, because Atlanta Legal Aid Society will assist veterans, and they can assist you in areas such as child custody, landlord-tenant disputes, foreclosure, short sales, and Georgia Legal Services Provider can help with things like Social Security benefits, Medicare, and Medicaid. And then on the next slide here, I wanted to talk specifically about the low income standard because we actually had a question about this last time I was on BrainTalk. And so I just want to make sure everyone's clear. So we actually use the current federal poverty levels that are published every single year. And we consider you low income if you're not making more than 200% above the federal poverty level. So for instance, if you are if there are 4 persons in your household, and you're making less than $53,000 a year, we would consider that low income, and we could provide free services to you. And again, if you have any questions, always feel free to call and ask. and I have her contact information later on in the presentation. Another thing I wanted to discuss today, because this came up in the last discussion, are some common veterans benefits. So one very common benefit outside of the disability benefit would be aid and attendance. So aid and attendance, and it's actually up to $22.95 a month for a married veteran. Single veterans are eligible too, but I'm just giving you an idea of the monthly benefit. So you may be eligible for aid and attendance if you are currently getting a VA pension. So you have to be currently getting a VA pension, and you meet at least one of the requirements listed below. So at least one of these things, not all of them, but at least one must be true. You need another person to help you perform daily activities, bathing, feeding, etc. Or you have to stay in bed because of illness, or you are a patient in a nursing home due to the loss of mental or physical abilities related to a disability, or your eyesight is limited. And it looks like our slides went off the screen for a second. Let's go back a couple. Go back one more. There we are. All right. So and the last one is that your eyesight is limited. And this is limited even with glasses or contact lenses. Another very common veterans benefit is called household or housebound benefits. And you may be eligible for this if you are getting a VA pension and you spend most of your time in your home because of a permanent disability. And of course, that's just simply a disability that doesn't go away. Now, you can't get aid and attendance plus housebound benefits, but you can get one or the other. And spouses, by the way, are also eligible for aid and attendance. There are very specific requirements you must meet as a spouse. So if you think you fall into a category of a spouse eligible for aid and attendance, just let us know and we can walk through your particular set of circumstances. And then the next
aid
slide.
and attendance if you've been divorced?
I'm sorry?
Can you get aid and attendance benefits if you have been divorced from the veteran?
It actually matters if you've remarried or not. So if you're divorced and you haven't remarried, there's a possibility that you could receive this, but if you have remarried, then the answer is most likely no. But it is very fact specific. So if you think you might fall into the category, just give us a call and let us know. And then on the next slide, I've listed some common benefits specifically for spouses. So there is a VA survivor's pension, and you may be eligible for this if you have not remarried after the veteran's death, and if the deceased veteran did not receive a dishonorable discharge, and their service meets at least one of these conditions below. So the veteran must have entered active duty on or before September 7, 1980, and served at least 90 days on active military service during a covered wartime period, or they entered active duty after September 7, 1980, and served at least 2 years during a covered wartime period, or the veteran was an officer and served on active duty after October 16, 1981, and hadn't previously served for at least 24 months. Now, an obvious question, of course, is, well, what is a covered wartime period? So if we're talking about a Vietnam War veteran, that's a covered wartime period. World War I, World War II, even the Gulf War, which, by the way, started in 1920 and continues even until today. So the ending of that period has not been set yet. Now, for you, this must be true. Your yearly family income and net worth meet certain limits set by Congress. So right now, the limit is $130,773 a year. And this is true at least through November 2021. And if you're wondering what your net worth is, this equals the value of everything you own, except your primary house, minus any debt you owe. And then on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about DIC, and this is a popular one. If you are the surviving spouse of a veteran who died in the line of duty, or the survivor of a veteran who died from a service-related injury, or you're the survivor of a veteran who was receiving VA disability benefits for a totally disabling condition, you may be able to get this tax-free benefit known as DIC. And to be eligible, one of these must be true. Now, just one. So you married the veteran before January 1, 1957. You married the veteran within 15 years after their discharge from the military. You were married to the veteran for at least 1 year. So a lot of people fit this category, even if they don't fit the others. Or you had a child with the veteran. You are not currently remarried and either lived with the veteran without a break until their death, or if you separated, it was not your fault. And the next slide. All right, so I'm actually really excited about some of our upcoming clinics. As Dr. Parker and Ms. Dorman have both mentioned, we are actually co-hosting a clinic with the ADRC, and this is going to be on March 11 from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And this is for veterans living all throughout Georgia. And we're going to be providing assistance with disability benefits, discharge upgrades, and/or estate planning. And then we also have a clinic coming up with Atlanta Legal Aid Society on April 22nd from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Again, this is for veterans living all throughout Georgia. And at this clinic, we can actually help with disability benefits, discharge upgrades, estate planning, Social Security benefits, child custody issues, divorce issues, and even short sale or foreclosure issues. And these are going to be virtual clinics conducted via Zoom, like we're all here today via Zoom. And what you need to do is you need to contact our paraprofessional, Roxana Poosh, and her contact information is on the next slide. There she is. So roxana.poosh@emory.edu. Contact her and let her know you would like to attend one of these clinics, or maybe you want to attend both. And she will give you all the information you need to come to the virtual clinic. And of course, I've also listed contact information for Kiera Prince. She handles all of our discharge upgrades. So feel free to email her if you need help in that area. And Jenna Breslin handles disability benefits and estate planning. So I've included her email. And of course, I included a link to our Veterans Clinic website in case you just want to learn more about us. And we are located inside the law school. Most of us are working from home these days, but sometimes people need to mail us documents or whatnot. So I have our address there. If you prefer to call or you just don't have access to email, call us at 404-727-1044. And once we're finally back on campus, if you need to visit us, keep in mind that this office is accessible by a wheelchair. And with that said, I'm just happy to take any questions in the chat if you have any, and otherwise happy to be here today. Thanks for having me again.
Thank you.
Okay, is Matt on? We're going to transition to Matt really quick and then to you, Whit. Looks like Matt is not on. Did he drop the actual CEP link in there?
Yeah, he did.
All right, okay, grab that link if you all are ready to hop on over to join CEP, the Cognitive Empowerment Program. Whit, give us an update about our healthy aging study, please.
All right. So for those that are joining us for the first time here, my name is Whit. I am the communications specialist here for the Emory Healthy Aging and the Healthy Brain Studies. And I just wanted to talk real quick with you about a really great research opportunity that we do have available. The Emory Healthy Aging Study is unique because it is done entirely online. So for those that are joining us for the first time here, if you haven't participated in research before, or maybe you've been on the fence about it, this is a really great opportunity and something that you should certainly consider. This study is open to anybody over the age of 18 in the US and its territories who has an internet capable device. And as long as you can read and understand English, you can participate in our research study. And our study itself is really kind of geared towards trying to understand not only how we age, but unlocking some of those mysteries to better understand what causes certain age-related diseases. And we're doing this by having our study participants complete an online health history questionnaire once a year. So we're going to ask you some questions about your, your diet. We want to know, we got some really great information earlier from Dr. Parker about diet. We want to know about your dietary habits. Are you eating enough fruits and vegetables? How much alcohol are you drinking? How much exercise are you getting? We talk a lot about the importance of these things each week, and we definitely want to know that kind of information in the Emory Healthy Aging Study. We're also going to ask you some medical questions, any underlying conditions and things like that. And I like to share my screen here with everybody because this is an online research study. Want to walk you through, make sure that you visit our website, healthyaging.emory.edu, and click on this big yellow button up here in the top right-hand corner. It is 4 steps to register and join. And once you've completed the health history questionnaire, a year from that point, when it's time to update the information, don't worry, we will send you an email with a link to make sure it's very easy for you and serve as a reminder. I'm also going to drop my email address into the chat box. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. I'll be more than happy to answer additional questions or help you walk through this process.
Excellent. And you can join the Emory Healthy Aging Study from anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. So if you are on the fence and have reservations, then perhaps you know someone else who is interested and would like to be a part of the study. Carlissa, it's Carlissa.
Yes.
So there
Yes,
is a
Carlissa.
question. My adult disabled son, is he eligible for VA because his deceased father was 100% disabled?
Yes, I was actually just about to type an answer to that. Of course, it depends like on the adult son's age and whatnot, but I'm actually going to type an answer to that now. But yes, under certain circumstances, a child or a spouse is eligible for that benefit.
Okay. And right, I saw a lot of chats, but I'm hoping they were all addressed while we were having our session. Mark your calendars if you are a veteran. The clinic, I think there is a limited amount of space, correct?
So we will take probably up to 30 people. We try to assist as many as possible. And of course, if you miss this clinic, there will be other clinics in the future. But yeah, we generally take about 25 to 30 per clinic.
Okay. And if you live in the state of Georgia, you will be screened, correct? To make sure that you can participate.
Yeah, so once they contact Roxana, she will send an intake form, or what we call an intake form, and it's just a series of questions that the veterans will answer. And that not only helps us understand your issue, but it also helps ensure that you are a veteran, that you do live in Georgia, et cetera.
Okay. And if you're a child of a spouse who is, are you entitled to spouse benefits if you're a child of a spouse who is married? I think that's the same question, just from a different person.
I think it might be, yes.
That's a common question. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to type an answer to that.
All right. I think that's it, you all. Let's see, someone needs a separate link. We will drop the link in the chat for you if you want to grab it and share it with people for next week. Sounds like we're going to extend our exercise session for next week because John mentioned he wanted to have a little bit more exercise for next week. If you have additional questions and if Carlissa is available, we may bring her on if she can next week for maybe 5 to 7 more minutes, just as we lead up to March 11th, which is next Thursday, to make sure that everyone who wants to participate, that they are at capacity. We don't want to host a program and not have capacity. All right, so if you have not transitioned already, head over to CEP Live. They're going to be talking about cyber security, it looks like. And so that link is available. All right, that's all I have. Dr. Parker, do you have anything, or Dr. Wharton, before we close out?
Thank you all for joining us each week. Come back next week and participate in anything that you feel comfortable participating in. including getting your vaccination.